Hello, and welcome to my porch. The essence of having a prosperous and fulfilling life relies heavily on effective time management and focusing on priorities. This is what drives all successful individuals and companies. With today's demanding and crazy environment, both at work and at home, managing your priorities with effective time management is so important. Let's explore these 6 practical tips and techniques on how you can gain better time and manage those priorities. Let's get started. All right, let's get on to tip number 1 is time logs. And time logs can be a crucial and significant way for you to really gain how you are using your time. And I know this is going to be challenging for some of you, but I want to challenge you with this task. Check out the link below and you will have a handout that you will be able to print and be able to track your time. And I want you to do this for 7 days, 7 consecutive days. And I want you to track what time you get up, what time you go to bed. I want you to track how much time you spend on emails, how much time you spend putting out fires, how much time you spend on brainstorming in meetings. If you are researching something, if you are learning a new skill or technique, just really keep this piece of paper right by you all the time. It does not work. You cannot go to the end of the day and try to backtrack and keep track of where you spent your time for the day. You have to do this activity in the moment. This will be one activity that you will gain more knowledge and be able to make significant changes in your life based on where you really spend your time and where you think you spend your time, because we really need to get these in a cohesive manner and really start spending the time on your priorities and what's really most important to you. And the first step of that is to track where are you at right now. So I encourage you not to make any changes going into this. I want this to be 7 typical days that you go through and just track where you spend your time. Keep the piece of paper right by you. As you transition to different things, as you get interrupted, as the phone rings and you take a phone call, I want you to document that you spent 5 minutes, 10 minutes, however much time that you spent. And I really encourage you to do this first step before you do any of the other tips and techniques that I'm going to share today. Let's move on to tip number 2, quality time. This is where you plan a block of time to do your most important high priority task. For some of you, you may be an early morning riser. For others, you're a night owl. Some of you may get your best energy in the afternoon. So know what works for you and utilize it to your full potential. And when it comes to quality time, it's important to set a schedule that works really well for you. Now, for me, I tend to get into a project and I am all in it, and it's really hard for me to stop. So being able to do blocks of 2 or 3 hours really is frustrating on most days, because I just want to keep doing it, and I have this sense of I've got to finish it. So when I get knee deep in it, I want to just absorb my time. Dan Sullivan has a neat entrepreneurial time system where instead of doing blocks of time, he has focus days and buffers days and free days, and you can use whatever works for you. So for me, I like to have a focus day, and I know that I'm all in, and I'm either going to be recording, I'm going to be working on a client project, or I'm going to be spending the day doing my landscaping. So know what works for you when it comes to quality time. So be able to use a quality schedule and a quality time of day. Those times where you can really just wrap everything together and be able to be at your optimal time. How you spend your money and how you manage your time really does have a big effect on your priorities. And whether you want to admit it or not, those priorities become full force when you start scheduling your best times for those. All right, let's move on to tip number 3, dealing with documents. And I want to take it a step further for dealing with stuff in general. So documents and stuff can really steal a lot of your time. And in order to capture that time back, you need to think about the 2-minute rule. If you can do it in less than 2 minutes, just do it. If you hate filing, do not have a filing basket. Get rid of it, throw it away, use it for something else, put apples in it, do anything but put papers in it if you hate to file. Because what's going to happen is you are notoriously going to put it in and put it in and put it in, and it's never going to get filed. So let's just acknowledge that part about you and get rid of the filing basket and just file it right away. The second part is to think about what you really need to file. And every company or business needs a document policy. What needs to be kept, for how long, because otherwise people tend to keep everything for years and years and years. So I want to take it a step further past the documents and talk about stuff. Because if you are constantly looking for your keys, find an easy way. I was really bad about my keys. I would come in and I would set them here and set them there and set them there. And I know I'm supposed to be an organized person, but sometimes I'm just not. And they just tended to be everywhere. So I got this cool little snap that attaches to the end of my purse. If there is something that you're always looking for, create a system for it. And I always encourage people to find something that may take a little longer to get, but is super easy to put away, because we will go at lengths to get something we need. We never go at lengths to put it away. All right, let's talk about tip number 4, which is managing interruptions. In any given day, we are all interrupted at some stage from the activity that we are undertaking. Whether this is a phone call from a colleague or a family member, they can all impact the time that you have allocated for a particular task. Now, why is this so important? Once you get interrupted, it takes you sometimes 3 times as long to get back into the zone or the area that you were at before you were interrupted. Now, by this time, hopefully you have scheduled at least when you're going to do your 7-day time log. And once you do that time log, you're going to know exactly where your interruptions are coming from. Look back at your data and look at, is it the same person interrupting you? Is it different people but the same problem? Is it more phone interruptions? Is it more people coming into your office area with an interruption? So once you do the time log, you'll really be able to drill down and be able to say, what can I do to alleviate some of those interruptions? Maybe you'll find that it's the same person and maybe they need more training. Perhaps it's your children and you need to reevaluate what time you were focusing on your bigger projects. And if it's a time when they are awake and alert and maybe finishing a task, you may be able to rearrange your schedule to be able to have less interruptions. So a lot of times when you manage interruptions, it's really about, it's not necessarily eliminating interruptions, because sometimes that's really impossible to do, but we can limit them by being a little bit smarter. And that means looking at ways that we can adapt or adjust our schedule. We can add in more training. We can find some fun activities for our children to be able to do, especially this time when there's a lot of people still working at home. And it's as simple as not having chairs in your office. Because if you have chairs in your office, you're inviting people to come in and sit. And when people come in and sit, they tend to stay longer. It could be re-shifting your desk so your eye is not to the hallway. If they see their eyes, they'll go, oh, you're not busy. And in they come and interrupt. So be able to, first step, of course, is to go back to the time log and look at really what are the interruptions that you're having. And then the second part of this tip and technique is to be able to address those head on and to solve the problems alleviating from all those interruptions. And the last thing I'm going to say is we are in such a technology world. Beep, honk, beep, beep, beep. Everything is grabbing at your attention. And know that if that is interrupting you and getting you off task, maybe you need to not have the timers, or maybe you need to silence them before you get started on the task. It can also be sometimes as simple as letting people know, hey, I'm going to be focusing on this project for the next 3 hours. If something's not burning down, do not disturb me. Managing our interruptions are really important to be able to focus on our priorities. Let's move on to tip number 5, managing your workspace. How your workspace is organized has an impact on how efficient you are at managing your time. So let's look at your workspace and how cluttered it is. And more importantly, do you even have a workspace? You want to be more productive and you want to be able to manage your priorities, have a designated workspace. Now for me, I normally work from home, and my husband tells me that I am all over the house, and I like to do different things in different areas of the house. Because I'm here all the time, I need to be able to change that up. So don't be afraid to have more than one workspace. And maybe there's a place where you want to do all your videos. Maybe there's a place where you want to be able to work on projects. Maybe there's a place where you want to do your morning devotions. Maybe there's a place where you want to do your morning exercise. So be able to manage your workspace on a much bigger level. And think about your home, if you work from home, as an open canvas, and be able to think about what your workspace is like and what you want it to be like and what motivates you. And be able to find a place that if you're going to go through mail and you're going to be able to need to file things, you definitely want to go through the mail where you're right there, because we already talked about documents earlier in this video, and you need to be able to just put it right away. So if you grab your mail and you go through it and you're next to the shredder and you're next to the filing system, you're next to the folder for the bills that need to be paid, if you are immediately dealing with things, then you're not going to end up with chaos if you're always putting things in their right spot. Now, yes, sometimes things get out of hand and you need to take a deep breath and you need to declutter the desk and start over. But I want you to be able to create a workspace that is meaningful to you and that has the things that you love. So when you think about your workspace, think about the color on the walls, think about the artwork, think about what type of things that you want to have in there. Do you want to have a water feature? Do you want to have a Zen garden? Do you want to have a couple plants? So whatever's going to make you, not make you, but help you be more productive, is you want to be able to make it your own. You need to have a designated spot, and you need to be able to, at the end of the day, and this is one thing that I've really had to learn over time because I've been bad at it, and that is that sometimes I work such long hours, I kind of just leave everything. And I've really been practicing putting things away, putting things, even if I may drift to this table or drift outside, I'm making sure that when I'm done that I'm kind of putting it away and putting it back in the office space. So don't be afraid to move around. Don't be afraid to make it your own. And don't be afraid if what works for you is the same spot. If you like routine and you like that continuity, then maybe you need to create your workspace in one spot and it stays there all the time. If you have a designated room, if you are working from home right now, I would definitely encourage you having an office somewhere where you can close the door and kind of get away from things, because I know with children at home for longer periods of time now, a 2 or 3 month summer vacation has turned into really a 5 or a 6 month, and really just be able to have a space that's your office, that you can close the door, that when you have your focus days, you are able to just drill down and focus. So that's really important, to be able to manage your workspace. If you have, again, if you have questions, please comment below, and I'd love to answer your questions. All right, our last tip number 6, is getting a handle on your technology. And when I wrote a blog on this, it was more getting a handle on your phone, and I've kind of expanded it. But let's talk about the phone for just a minute. Because when you get a handle on your phone, if it is ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing, if you are constantly answering emails and phone all the time, sometimes you'll end your day and you'll go, oh my gosh, I think the only thing I got done was email and phone calls. And I've had those kind of days before. And sometimes maybe you need those days when you are just all focused in on technology and you're dialed in or zeroed in. If there's a kickoff day, being able to schedule that time in your calendar and know, you know what, I know that we're opening this or this project's kicking off. I know that there's going to be maybe more fires to put out, more times. Maybe that's just a day that you totally reserve for phone and email. But if it's on a typical day, you will find if you can start controlling the email and the phone. And let's just start first thing in the morning. I have a morning routine that's about an hour and a half in the morning, and I do not look at email, because if I look at email, then I'm sucked in for a lot longer than I want to be. And it's usually not a quick deal. So I really try to make sure that I'm getting in the things that are important to me first thing in the morning before I touch the phone. And then, having a designated time in your calendar where you are maybe checking emails and phone calls, being able to set a schedule so people know when you're going to be checking your emails and your phone will probably be a great idea. And it's not that you can't, because I know that in today's world we have to be constantly attached sometimes. If you want to be more productive with your time and manage your priorities, you really need to have designated times of when I'm going to check my email and return phone calls. And maybe that is at 8 in the morning, at noon, and at 4 before you go home in the evening. Think about when you're going to return those calls and to be able to build those times into your calendar, because I have found that I am so much more productive when I am not constantly on my phone. And when it comes to priorities, I find at the end of the day that I've achieved those because I take control of the technology and the emails and the phone, and it's not something that controls me. Now, I will also give you some tips on phone calls in general, and part of that is if you stand instead of sitting down during a phone call, they tend to last less time. Being able to batch your outward calls, turn all your calls at 8, and then return more calls at noon, and then record calls at 4. And you may, if you're going to have like a 2 or a 3 hour underground focus time, not during your focus time, before your focus time, and then you know that you need to probably schedule time after. You can also put recordings on your email or on your phone. Working on a project, I'll be returning emails at. Let people know when you will be responding. Also delegating calls. Really look at and ask yourself, do you need to be making all those phone calls? It's really frustrating on a business owner's side to always have to answer the phone, but it's also really hard on looking through or trying to get through to you that wants to talk to you. It's also frustrating for them to be able to do that. So being able to designate one person on your team to be able to be on the phone can save a lot of time, especially if you rotate that person around. So if that person's job is to answer phone calls, it alleviates a lot of time that people have to make phone calls back. So sometimes that's easier. Let's just say you have a staff of 5 or 10 people, be able to have one person designated on the phone, and then they're taking those phone calls and handling things, and the other 9 people on your team are able to be more productive. All right, I think as I end, just remember that time management is a skill, and it is definitely something you can learn. And I am not perfect at time management. I constantly learn things every day. But if you start by doing the time log, if you really think about where your interruptions are happening, if you really get control of your space and you really get control of, your priorities and where you want that time to be spent, and if you take control of your schedule and your calendar, you are going to find that you are going to just make leaps and bounds when it comes to time management and managing those priorities. I thank you so much for joining me. Remember to subscribe to my channel. I am working on getting more diligent with doing these type of videos, so it's a work in progress. Make comments below. Let me know your thoughts. If you have questions, I'd love to interact with you, and have a great day.